G'day, you delightful Bomber fans. So the other day, Cal Toomey named the 6 draft prospects that he thinks Essendon could be picking from in this year's draft with picks 5 and 6. Those players were Sullivan Robey, Xavier Taylor, Dyson Sharp, Sam Cumming, Jacob Farrow, and Aidan Schubert. I talked about this and why it was interesting in my draft mail video a few days ago, but today I'm going to go into detail on those players that I just named and talk about them as prospects and why they're potential fits for the club. These 6 players are all very different positions, and there's a really good chance that 2 of them are on our list this time next month. So today I'm going to go in order and talk about them, starting with the guys that I maybe want less, and then at the end getting to my favourites of the bunch. I'll start by saying, by the way, I love all these guys as draft prospects, and the fact that we're talking about them in relation to the club and we're a chance to land 2 of them shows how strong our draft end is this year, and I guess it shows the opportunity that we have to add real talent to our list. So let's get into it. Remember, we're going in ascending order, going one by one. We'll eventually talk about the ones that I really want out of this 6 at the end of the video, so let's go. Starting with Aidan Schubert from South Australia. He is a big key forward who can pinch hit in the ruck. He's going to grow to be probably 2 meters tall, and his late birthday means there is more upside and room for growth potentially. Now, nothing against him as a prospect. I think this guy is great. In fact, I probably think as a general draft prospect, he's a better option for most clubs than some of the others I'll discuss in this video. But I was a bit surprised by him being named in this group of 6. I think it's maybe more of a needs-based thing. I just think Essendon have signed on quite a few key forwards recently, and this range of the draft where Schubert sits in is actually one where you don't necessarily need to draft based on what is the best available pick. So, you can go needs basis a bit and pass on a player who maybe has a bit more upside in one position and go for somewhere, a position that you need. I don't think we need key forwards more than we need midfielders is what I'm trying to say. That's just my opinion. You might disagree, and I do get the arguments why some would prioritise Schubert over others. I wouldn't be unhappy if we got him. He's a great prospect, and I actually think there was a genuine argument for him being the MVP at Champs instead of Dyson Sharp. He was incredible for South Australia, one of the most important players. He kicked 10 goals in 4 games, but what I really liked was his accumulation. That really caught my eye when watching. This guy can win the footy up the ground. He's got a really good work rate. He's not just a proven goal scorer inside 50, but a really effective ruckman and around the ground forward too. And that's shown by his 2K time trial at the Combine. He was in the top 10 and he was 5 seconds off being in the top 5, which is crazy for a player of his size. So that's really great. That's a massive tick. You've got a player that's not just dual position because of his height, but he's genuinely great in both positions and really effective there. Now, I can see why Essendon like him. He's that taller forward who still possesses mobility. He's incredible in the air. His long arms are really tough to beat out. He's a very good contested mark. Probably, is he the best contested mark in the draft? He'd be up there. I do see a lot of Peter Wright in him at his best, the best of Peter Wright, but I reckon there's a bit of an edge with his toughness and competitiveness. I could see him working really well with Nate Caddy. Obviously, we've already got Peter Wright and Archer May and other marking targets on the list, but if I'm guessing who has the most upside in 4 to 5 years' time out of, Archer May, Peter Wright, and Aidan Schubert, it would be Aidan Schubert. So maybe the club is looking at him as a potential long-term partner for Nate Caddy to be that big, towering marking target, not just inside 50, but around the ground to be an outlet mark as well. It should be noted, rule changes will benefit clubs and allow them to produce more height on the bench. I think the way it's looking, clubs will be using that 23rd, that extra bench spot to bring in a taller, mobile player that can kind of lock in a few different positions, and that feels like Aidan Schubert to me. He's really versatile, but I think it's not just versatile because of his size and stature, it's because he's really effective in whatever position he plays. And although it is a small sample size, he has also played against bigger bodies. He starred for Central Districts in the under-18s, kicked 28 goals in 13 games, but he did also play 1 reserves game, kicked 3 goals, and 1 Sandful senior game where he kicked a booming goal from outside 50, I think, from memory, which did showcase his range from goal, again, like Peter Wright. He's got a bit more distance that he can kick from, which is really good for a key forward. I am comparing him to Peter Wright. I don't actually think they're similar players or anything. I think Schubert probably has more room for movement and more weapons to build on for the future. And also, speaking of the future, I touched on this before, but he was born in December, the 21st of December, meaning he was only a little over a week away from being eligible for next year's draft. And that might not sound like much at all. He's the same same age, in the grand scheme of things as a lot of these other prospects. But that can almost be, 12 months difference to some of the opponents he was playing on and other prospects in this year's draft crop. I think Zach Johnson from last year, he's the youngest player in the AFL right now, and I think we lucked out a bit picking him pick 70 with that late birthday, because if he was born a week later, he would be in this year's draft, and he definitely would have been pick 70 then. So, yeah, Schubert as a prospect, I think he's just about the best pure key forward in this draft. So if we got him, we'd be getting the best player in his position, which is great. I don't think there's much of an argument there as well either. I loved his work for South Australia in champs. I love the different roles he's played throughout the year and how good he was in those roles. He's got layers to his game that other key forwards of his age simply do not have. Of the 6 I'll discuss, he's the one I'm least excited about for Essendon specifically, but it doesn't mean I'd be disappointed to take him. I think there's a genuine argument that he is a top 10 player in this year's draft crop. We move on to Dyson Sharp, another South Australian. This is a really divisive draft prospect. I think a lot of people... I feel like a lot of people don't think I like this guy because I don't rate him as highly as others do. That's not really the case. I think this range of the draft is really even. I struggle to split a lot of these guys in this range. I might not have him in the top 5 or top 10 like others do. It doesn't mean I don't like him as a prospect. I think there are definitely benefits to drafting Dyson Sharp, not just for, other clubs, but for Essendon as well. So he's a big-bodied midfielder. He's a pure ball winner, really strong at the contest and really hard at it. He's 188 centimetres, so he's a great size, 18 years old, genuinely looks close to 30, and I mean that as a compliment. This guy, you wouldn't call him a boy. This is a man. He is a man already, and I think that is where maybe my preferences differ a bit to others, because I personally don't quite see the upside of a Dyson Sharp as much compared to, for example, a Jacob Farrow, who I'll talk about in a second as well. But I think there is a much more bankable draft prospect in Dyson Sharp than pretty much everyone in the league. I think this is the most bankable prospect in this draft, as in this. We know what he's going to be. I see Dyson Sharp as a guy who's going to come into the AFL, play 150 plus games. I think he's going to be a really good midfielder. I just think there are others in his position that maybe possess a bit more upside, and this is where personal preference comes into things, because it really depends on what you want to draft a player for. I personally would rather the Bombers draft players that maybe take a bit longer to develop but reach higher levels, whereas I see Dyson Sharp as someone who plays great footy sooner or straight away. In fact, he's probably a rising star contender for 2026 for whatever club he plays for. He could fit right in the starting midfield for quite a few teams in the competition. He could play every game next year, but I don't really know if he's got much or as much room for growth as other players. And I'm not saying he doesn't. I just don't know if that room is there. And I think with the game trending so much towards ball movement and transition, I think the type of player that Dyson Sharp is maybe doesn't quite change your style and structure and output like a pick 5 or 6 should. I think he maybe lumbers about a bit around the ground, a bit like Ollie Greaves does, and that's a bit of a criticism that Greaves has faced, which I haven't seen as much for Dyson Sharp. I remember watching Game 1 of Champs, and it was maybe only a quarter or two, but Dan Annable, one of the best midfielders, most well-rounded midfielders in the draft, was running rings around him a little bit in a quarter. I think his contest work is already elite. He is in many ways, he's that big-bodied midfielder that we've been crying out for so long in a lot of ways, which is why I get the want from many fans for him. I just don't know if his game on the outside is going to be as effective as he goes, as he goes a level up in the AFL, because I didn't even really think it was at this level in the 18s. Now, the benefits of Dyson Sharp, you get someone who you know will be really good in the contest aspect of footy. That's not to be slept on. I don't trust him as much in transition and in the open play, but in the contest, he is bankable, and even if he isn't great on the outside, he is a beast on the inside. He is really tough, and that is something maybe we do need in the guts a bit more. You could argue that. I also see his leadership as a serious tick, and that is something that the club has lacked a bit in recent years, and bringing in a figure like Dyson Sharp into the team would give us such a lift from our youth. I feel like his energy and leadership on the track would improve those around him. That is something to consider. It's all well and good to draft good football players, but you need good characters too, and there aren't many in this draft more highly regarded than Dyson Sharp. I think that's the thing with Dyson Sharp, is that Or I guess there's a few things. So much of his profile, I think, is close to perfect. You know, his leadership, his contest footy, but there are some really big deficiencies which I don't think are talked about enough personally. That's just my opinion. I could see why the club would draft him. He is, as of right now, the most ready-made, probably the best performing, or definitely the best performing, most consistent maybe. He's one of the best leaders. He can hit the scoreboard as well inside 50. There are so many strengths. In many ways, it makes a lot of sense to draft a Dyson Sharp, especially for a rebuilding team like Essendon. I'm just a bit more 50-50 with some parts of his game, which I don't think are talked about enough from some people. Let me know what you think down below about Dyson Sharp, because he is a really divisive figure. I just think there are better prospects in this year's draft. Next up, we go from South Australia to West Australia with Jacob Farrow. He is a defender with midfielder traits. He's played a bit of both this year, mostly out of defence when I've seen him play. He's 187 centimetres, really good size. He's got a bit of muscle on him already, which probably means he's a bit more ready-made than some others in his range. I think the cool thing with Farrow is that, yes, he looks ready, but I actually think he's got levels still to go to. I've got him around the 15 to 20 mark in my personal rankings, but I also think he's got upside that he hasn't quite hit this year. Now, I've only really seen him properly play for Champs, for WA at Champs. I haven't really watched much waffle footy this year, unfortunately, so I probably don't have as much information or as much of an opinion on Jacob Farrow as others in this draft, but he was by far and away the best of the West Australian prospects at Champs. You look at his strengths, I think the main one would be his ball use that I think of, and that's a really big tick in a draft like this. I've said it quite a few times this year that this draft is really lacking in elite footy or kicks of the footy, and Jacob Farrow, in my opinion, is one of the better kicks in this crop. When I've watched him, he's been stationed in the back half, taking lots of kick-ins, rebounding on that left boot. It's not just a good precision kick, but he's got some power on it as well, which is really good, which is probably due to his size, I guess. He's obviously a really good accumulator and a really proactive and productive player at whatever level he's in, but I still think he's left a bit out there at some times this year. I see more to him than he showed this year, which is a good thing because he was all Australian at Champs, averaging a little under 20 touches a game. I think the cool thing with Farrow is that he can kind of play that Zach Johnson role early. I'm talking about Zach Johnson a lot in this video, aren't I? He can utilise that kicking in the back half, link up with those around him. He can improve our ball use behind the footy, but I also do see midfielder traits for the future. He's got a cheeky bit of explosiveness about him. He's not afraid to take on a tackle. Maybe we haven't seen enough of it consistently to really trust that he's going to be doing that, every game at his best in the guts. I've said a few times this year, maybe I think he's composed and relaxed, but almost too much at times. But that's a good weakness. I think if you've got someone who maybe doesn't have the intent of an inside midfielder, it's something that you can build with time and confidence at the level, and there is no place to do that like in an AFL system. So yeah, Jacob Farrow, if we're to end up with him, I would have absolutely no complaints at all. I think you've clearly got the makings of a really good player for the future. I like his size. I like his field kicking. I think he's really smart and measured behind the footy, which allows him to feature in a pretty flexible position to start his career. But as I said, I also think he's got the makings of a midfielder if he gets to work as well. He actually models his game off Jordan Dawson for the Crows, and I do see that. You watch him play and you're going to see a bit of Jordan Dawson about him. He's kind of that rangy player who likes to progress the ball forward, a lot of meters gained. Now, Farrow did highlight a few weaknesses recently in an interview for Rookie Central, which I liked. He said that he needs to tidy up one-on-one defending, which I did see a bit. I think this is where the intent comes into it a bit, where sometimes he can be brushed off a bit in the forward half or maybe beaten a bit by more dangerous forwards. He's not really someone you want locking down on a really good goal scorer. That's not the type of player he is. He did also say his running capacity as a weakness, and that's something you struggle to keep an eye on that when you only watch on screens on TV, because you don't get to see it live. But that is also something that will undoubtedly improve once he joins an AFL club. So yeah, the fourth favourite here, but by no means a bad pick if we grab him. I think this makes a lot of sense for the Bombers, and I wasn't surprised that his name was brought up in this 6. I think he's high upside. He's a lovely field kick, which is something we're lacking. It's also hard to find in this draft. I think there's more to him than meets the eye than just his field kicking. I think he's a genuine smoky to be picked up early by a club. This is where we get to the really exciting ones. I think if we take any of these 3 guys, the Bombers have done exceptionally well. Sam Cumming, I think he would be a genuine fan favourite if he joined the Bombers. So we're back in South Australia for this one. He is a 183 centimetre midfielder from North Adelaide, and I think he has a serious chance to be drafted by Essendon. I'd be surprised if we don't draft a midfielder this year at some stage, and Sam Cumming's going to be available, and he is a really hard player to pass up on. So, yeah, this guy, I love so much of his game, and I think the type of midfielder he is really stacks up in the modern game. I talked about Dyson Sharp maybe being a bit reliant on one aspect. I think Sam Cumming is a really good blend of inside and out. I have seen some knocks on his outside game, and I don't quite see that personally. I think he's really rounded and powerful. He does prefer the contest game a bit more, and he's got tremendous stoppage smarts. I really love the way he hits the footy at speed and doesn't slow down once he has it. He's explosive and powerful in close and personal, which is really good. He does also drift forward really well to hit the scoreboard, and this is something that's almost underrated with a draft prospect. That's the big weapon with Sam Cumming that I see. He's got a really good tank, and he uses it. He can outrun opponents and position himself inside 50 to be a dangerous forward option, even when playing stoppage to stoppage, and that is great. His work in the air is really good as well. He's only 183 centimeters, but he can outmark opponents in the air. It's a bit Isaac Heaney-esque. But my favorite thing about this guy is his toughness. I liked him as a draft prospect during champs, but I fell in love with him when I watched him in the Sandful for North Adelaide when he made his senior debut. The way this guy was getting bashed and crashed, bowled over by big men, and then he'd just get right back up and go for another contest. I look at parts of his game that specifically and see Jai Caldwell. It's just there's parts of him. He's a tough, no-nonsense midfielder, and that on its own would be great as a draft prospect. If he was just a solid contested midfielder who was really brave and tough, we would like him. But the upside in his game comes from that endurance and that work to push up and back, make himself dangerous outside of the engine room, and that's what makes a really effective modern player. When you've got that, not even really positional versatility, but serious weapons in different areas of the ground. And it also means he can play up forward early in his career, kind of be that half-forward flanker like a Dylan Moore, work up and back. I also like his downsides in a funny way. The main one I see is his ball drop and the way he kicks the footy. He kind of, how do you explain it? He doesn't really guide the footy. You know how you guide it with one hand? He kind of drops it, which can lead to some skewed kicks every now and then. The way I see it with that, that's something that is not only easily fixed, but I'd much rather see someone not kick the footy properly but get results, because this guy, he's not, you wouldn't say he's a bad kick, but I'd rather see that than have a good technique but fail to make the most of it. I think his weaknesses are ones that can be fixed in an AFL system. Yeah, I think we're a really good chance to draft Sam Cumming this year, and I would be very happy if we did. I've said this for months. He's been a mainstay on my draft whiteboard. I think the lowest I've had him is maybe 6th, which includes Dersma and CDT, who I'm not discussing today. He's one of my favorite open draft prospects. Just know if we draft him, I'll be happy. Xavier Taylor. There is a very, very strong possibility that this guy is drafted to Essendon. I think if Richmond pass on him, it will be almost impossible for the Bombers to do the same. I see this guy as one of the best draft prospects, not just in the open pool, but in the draft in general. I really love the way this guy plays and the assets he has, and I would be thrilled if he joins the Bombers. So Xavier Taylor is a 191 centimeter defender. I'll call him a defender. He can play as a tall defender. He can play smaller. I don't even think he's locked down to defense in his career. That's why I'm hesitant to call him a defender, because I think he's got traits which could see him play a range of different positions, which is why I like him so much as a player for one of our picks. So something I talk about a lot with draft prospects, I haven't really done it today, is whether they are more of a footballer or more of an athlete. I think most today in this video fit into one bracket, or the bracket of a footballer with kind of sprinkles of athleticism in some facet. Dyson Sharp's more of a footballer. Jacob Farrow is a footballer, but he's got some athleticism to him. Sam Cumming's probably a bit of both. But Xavier Taylor, for me, is a genuine 50-50. And that in the best way possible. I think his athleticism is off the charts. His speed and agility is brilliant. And you pair that with his height and aerial ability, his work in the air, you've got a guy that can win the footy in a wider range than those around him, which is really important. If he doesn't get you in the air, he's going to get you in ground level. But you pair that with his footy IQ and the way he reads the play and the footy in the air or on ground level, and it makes him a serious intercepting weapon behind the ball. And we've seen that for the Eastern Rangers this year and for Vic Metro. It makes him really hard to beat in one-on-ones as well, regardless of the size against him. He's got a versatility on the range of defenders that he can play on. I don't know if there are many players or any players in this draft who possess the amount of strengths or ticks that Xavier Taylor does. I feel like there is so much to this guy and to his game that you can really talk about. You can't really do it justice speaking about it in a video like this. And the more you watch him, the more you notice. And I feel like throughout the year, all of us draft nerds slowly kept bumping him higher and higher in the order at the same time, week after week, because every week we were noticing something different to his game and a reason to like him more. Even for guys like me, who I haven't seen him actually play in the flesh, I've heard incredible things about his work rate off the footy and his vocality and leadership on the park as well. He's apparently one of the loudest and best leaders in this draft, which is, you know, as I talked about with Dyson Sharp, is great for a club like Essendon. He is professional and really sets high standards for himself and those around him, which is super important. And I think the thing that is so attractive about Xavier Taylor for me and for Essendon, aside from his general upside as a draft prospect, is the fact that you can draft him with any other player in any combo and it makes sense. So, for example, I don't think the Bombers would want to draft Sam Cumming and Dyson Sharp together because there isn't heaps of versatility there. You've got two pretty contest-heavy midfielders. You wouldn't draft Aidan Schubert and another key forward. You wouldn't draft Jacob Farrow and Josh Lindsay. I don't think any of those combinations really work. But Xavier Taylor, I find it really hard to pair him with anyone in this draft and not be happy with it. Even other key defenders, it still makes sense because I don't see Taylor as just a key defender in his career. I think he could play wing. I honestly think he really could play wing straight away. I think if he honed in on his foot skills, he could play forward of the ball in the midfield maybe. I really like this guy a lot, and the good news is he may well be available for pick 5. I'd be super excited if the Bombers got Xavier Taylor. And finally, my favourite of the bunch in this range, and unfortunately maybe a guy who looks set to be gone before we pick, it is Sullivan Robey. I think we all know about this guy. He's one of the biggest bolters in draft history. He was nowhere to start the year, nowhere even a few months ago, and now he is potentially the 3rd or 4th player picked in the open pool this year, maybe 2nd in the open pool this year, hopefully 5th if he slides to Essendon. This guy is a 192 centimetre midfielder. He is still growing, by the way. He was actually sub 180 centimetres 2 years ago. He's had a 17 centimetre growth spurt in 2 years, which has kind of transformed his body and his game. He was originally a small in and under midfielder, but with his new body and work in the gym, he has become the ultimate power midfielder. He is so strong, so powerful at the contest. He has incredible competitiveness and athleticism. He really does just bully those around him, and his energy and intent to me means he's probably going to continue to do the same in the AFL. So the way I see it, I mean, yes, this guy's underexposed and a bit raw. He's got less professional footy experience than those around him, but his best has been dominant, and it's not even dominant, but seriously dominant. His late season form for the Eastern Rangers was incredible. It was so good to watch. He was either getting 35 touches a game or kicking 3 or 4 goals. He was dominating in the midfield, dominating up forward. Even with a cracked collarbone, he was almost the best player every week, and that came from limited exposure to the level, and that was against some really highly rated prospects in this year's draft. So think about the heights he can reach when he gets to have a pre-season in the AFL and he can work on his body more and work on his footy more. The guy's still growing, he's still learning. He isn't even 100% familiar with his own body yet because of how quickly it's developed. His ceiling is sky high. We don't have a good idea of how good this guy can be. He's got all the weapons to be a star in the AFL. Unfortunately, I think because of that, another club might act early and take him before us. Even West Coast with pick 2, I wouldn't be surprised. In my opinion, he's the 2nd best player in this draft after Willem Dersma. Not even open draft, but in the draft as a whole. It really wouldn't surprise me if he goes to West Coast or Richmond. I don't think he's going to the Bombers. I wish he would, but it would be good if he did, but I don't think he will. But that is that. Those are the 6 players in Essendon's draft range this year that we could be choosing from. Let me know what you think down below. Of these 6, who do you like the most? Who do you want at the club? Longer video today, so thank you for sticking around, but that is all. Cheers for watching, Bomber fans. Like if you enjoyed, subscribe if you're new, and as always, go Bombers.